Good morning. This is Phil Golfi with REMAX Escarpment, the Golfi Team. Welcome to the Golfi Real Estate Show, Hamilton edition with host Rick Zamperin.
Good morning. For weeks, Philip Golfi was so busy selling homes, he could not join us here on the Golfi Real Estate Show. And now in back-to-back weeks, we have the pleasure of chatting with Philip. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thanks. Happy to be back on the program. Thanks for the invite again. Happy to do this.
So if things slow down for you, is that why you're taking time out of your busy schedule to join us, or is it still crazy?
No, it's still crazy. My dad just took he's taken a weekend off. He's gone up to Montreal with my mom, and they're spending the weekend in Montreal, and we didn't want to put together a best of show, so I said, you know what, I'll hop in the hot seat and hop on the mic and put a show together with you, and away we go. So happy to be back here and happy to talk about the hardcore real estate talk, and there's been a lot of exciting things that happened, a lot of news releases, a lot of press releases, and both local and nationally that have been going on, and so we wanted to touch base on some of those items that have come up here in the Hamilton community and talk about them. And I know there's a lot of different opinions and different things going around, so I'm excited to jump into it with you and talk about it.
Yeah, so before we get to those hardcore issues, I do have to ask, because we have talked about this on the show before, is your mom and dad, are they going to Montreal in the Golfi RV?
you know about the RV, eh?
Oh, we've talked about it on the show. Yeah.
No, they're not taking it up to Montreal this weekend. They've winterized the RV for the time being. They're just out up on a little sight-seeking tour, and gonna go hang out in old Montreal, maybe do some Christmas shopping. So the RV has stayed put for the time being, but usually it's me taking off on the RV with some of my buddies. I don't know if he's elaborated on that, but I like to get.
No, he's not.
I like to steal the keys.
For another show.
Yeah, I like to steal the keys once in a while and take off.
As long as you don't end up like the Millers on We're the Millers.
Oh no, what a movie though! But no, definitely we're on the straight and narrow. We got to keep that thing on the road.
Definitely. Lots to come on the show, including some tips for those of you who are thinking about flipping a home. There are some tips that we're going to share about picking the right home to flip. We'll also talk about the investment community and the number of investors making up a growing portion of those who are buying up homes in this province. We'll talk about perhaps one of the most controversial issues in this city, and that is the potential expansion of the urban boundary. City Council voting to not go that route, at least for the time being. We'll dive into that. And we'll also talk about a condo developer out in the Barrie area that has pulled the rug out of some of their investors' feet. But before we get to that, let's focus on what is happening in real estate this week. What's going on with you and the Golfi team?
Yeah, it's same as always. It's another busy week as we start to head into the winter months. Usually this time of season we would start slowing down a little bit, and we would traditionally in past years we would see a lot of the unit sales come down. There wouldn't be a lot of market activity in comparison to some of the more busier months. And we would see people start to get ready for the holidays and start to push off their buying or selling plans until next year. Traditionally, right now, it's still a very hot time, still a very busy time here at the office. And it's still a time where people haven't achieved what they've wanted to achieve in terms of a real estate goal, and they still need to move, whether it's still looking to buy something because they've already sold, or still looking to sell because they need to, a new location, bigger or smaller house, or so on. But it all goes back to in my opinion, due to the lack of inventory right now that's on the open market. If there's anybody out there right now that is looking to buy a house, they would, they could explain almost better than I could how hard it is to buy a house right now. It's just extremely difficult. There's a lot of agents that are running around showing properties, right, typing up offers and putting offers in on properties, and have been just unsuccessful in being able to do so, just due to the fact that there's 20, 30 other buying parties that are also doing the exact same thing, and ultimately it's whoever has the most money is going to win. And well, there was a point in time, and I said this last week on the show, where it was the Labor Day long weekend in September when it started to cool down, and I said, you know what, we had a really good run. The market's starting to cool or level off, and we're heading towards a more traditional market. And we had about a 10-day to 2-week period there where it was a little bit slow, and we had to kind of reflect and whether we were going to change our marketing strategy or change our pricing strategies. But what ended up happening is we hopped back on the horse and picked up right where we left off. And there's still a lot of multiple offer situations right now. There's still many buying parties that are offering on properties, and the over asking numbers that are coming out where houses are selling for, not just for over asking, but just so far above the next comparable, or so far above the what's assumed to be the current market values, is what's happening in today's market. So we're navigating through it the best we can, but I always say I feel for the buyers who are in the market right now that are not only just trying to look and be able to bid on a property, but to find the right property has been an extreme struggle. And I'm working with a number of buyers on my end right now, and it's the amount of driving and touring around properties that I've done in the past. I want to say in the past 3 weeks alone has been nothing compared to what I've ever done before when it comes to looking for properties. And I like to time block and set my schedule. So oftentimes I'll set up my schedule, and there's times where I'll call one of my buyers and I'll say, hey, listen, I know we have 3-4 hours here blocked off to go look at properties, but I have nothing to show you, right? Based on what you're looking for, there's nothing that has been listed in your search criteria or your buying criteria in the last 3-4 days. Whereas we're used to having, lots of market activity, lots of new listings every single day there's lots of options to go look at. But right now there's just no options to go out and see. And we're having a really hard time in navigating that. And what we've done is we've gone to the old-fashioned practice of dropping off letters and door knocking. And it's he wants to live in a certain area, he wants to live in a certain style home, and unfortunately in the market activity hasn't been there. So we've been dropping off letters and dropping off business cards just to see if there's anybody that would consider selling their home. And that's the position we're in with some of our buyers right now.
Has that old style door knocking at least recently worked? Or are people going for that? Are people convincing themselves that, hey, somebody wants to buy my house, then yeah, I'll put it up for sale?
Yeah, it has worked. It definitely has. I have, experience. And we go back, we've talked about this on the show, where people will get those generic letters and saying, hey, I'll buy your house for cash right now. And, I'm not a real estate agent, but, I'll buy it. And you know which ones I'm talking about, right? You've gotten those ones in the mail, Rick?
Get them all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So we, we feel like we have a better opportunity because we have a reputable brand, and people know who we are when we drop off the letter or in the mail. And first things first is we're open and honest. We're here to make sure that we do a deal for market value, and it's just a situation where we couldn't find anything. So they to go back to answer your question, they have worked, and they are proven to be successful from my experience, especially when you're looking for a certain type of house. On my letter, in speaking for my specific situation, is my buyer's looking for a bungalow with a separate entrance with an in-law suite in the basement, and so in a price range up to $1.2 million. And I will specifically say this in the letter, and also attach his name and a picture of him on the specific letter. So there's a little bit more, it's a little bit more personal style of letter in comparison to the ones that are just auto generated and, hey, I'm not a realtor, but I'll buy your house for cash, which are a little bit more salesy and often put, when I get them, I just throw them out in the garbage right away, but they definitely put your guard up and say, what type of scheme is this? But my letter is very personable, personal, and hopefully it kind of, I'm dropping them off to certain neighborhoods and not just doing a auto blast, letter to 200,000 homes across the region.
We got about a couple of minutes left in this segment. On the supply issue, we know there's not a lot of supply out there in Hamilton. At this point of the year, is that more because there are more buyers, or are there fewer homes, or just both, and that's compounding the issue? Yeah,
it's just a vicious cycle what's going on. So what happens is we have this conversation all the time, and I say, well, what are you more comfortable doing? Okay, are you more comfortable selling first and knowing exactly how much money you have in your pocket to buy, but you might not find that exact home in that timeline that you have to when you sell your home? Or are you more comfortable buying first, having to go in firm, right? Because you will not buy a house with a conditional on sale of property in this market. You will have no chance. Never mind financing clause, home inspection condition. You will not buy a house. And I'm talking in broad terms. It's very difficult to buy a house with a condition on sale of property, finance clause, or inspection clause. To be successful, you got to be comfortable with going out, buying a house firm without selling your house. And so some people, aren't comfortable with that. But they're also not comfortable with, selling their house without knowing where they're going. And that often results in them just saying, okay, well, I'm going to stay put for the time being because I can't decide one way or another. And now that person's not a buyer or seller, and they stay put. And that's, we're just in this vicious cycle where people are just, too afraid to make the move. And that's why we're not getting, a lot of new listings. From my experience, a lot of the new listings that are on the market right now are not people that are moving to other houses. They're either moving, to retirement centers, or they're moving to new construction properties that they bought 2 or 3 years ago. There's not too many people that are selling their home with nowhere to go, or selling or buying a home without selling their house. So that's the vicious cycle that we're some buyers and sellers are stuck in today.
If you are into home flipping or even thinking about getting into it, we have some tips for you on how to pick the right home. We'll also talk about investors in this province and a growing number of them in Ontario, as well as Hamilton's urban boundary issue. But there was a very unique story that exploded out of Barrie earlier this week regarding a condo developer in that community that has canceled a years-long deal unless buyers fork over a boatload of money. So this developer is asking investors, and again, this project has not been completed, it's asking its investors to fork over another $100,000 or they can leave with their deposit. This is interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Just an emotional story all around, and an unfortunate set of circumstances, for the current, for the buyers, right? It's not fair to them to endure this, right? Especially, for an investor who's buying their 4th or 5th or 6th property, sure, you know what I mean? They can endure it and kind of move on and move along. But this is, a first-time buyer, 29 years old, and she's sharing her story with her experience in terms of what has happened. And it's a situation where, she put a deposit down. She's really excited for this new condo development that she's purchased. She's following the housing market. She's so grateful in terms of, thank God I got into the market. The condo's worth $400,000 more than what I paid for it. This is going to set me up for the future, and I'm so excited. And then all of a sudden, they get a notice stating that you got to pay $100,000 more on top of the original purchase or walk away. And it's devastating news to hear for this individual person, because she shares her story and talks about how hard she's worked and how much money she's had to save to to achieve this and buy this condo, and it's a lot. It's just an, it's a devastating situation. So I guess we can get into some of the legalities in terms of why this happened and how it happened and why and this is just another example or another situation of this happening, and she's definitely not the first that this has happened to.
Yeah, so this is a woman who also, moved in with her parents to save some money for this deposit, put off her wedding with her partner to save up again, knowing that the housing market has gone nuts, and she was, ecstatic that, $500,000 she was able to start investing in this property. But now this developer's asking for $100K more because the average price of a property in Barrie has skyrocketed to north of $800,000. So, this developer is being accused of not necessarily scamming these people, but wanting to capitalize on current market conditions. So what are the rules in this case, and what should buyers be wary of?
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost is for these new build and new development contracts, the contract is written by the builder. So the contract is obviously in favor to write the contract in their favor to be able to protect themselves, both financially and legally. So as much as this is a situation that's extremely difficult, this is something, I always say there's always a type of, some sort of risk that you take on when you're buying pre-construction or new build. Keep in mind, the only thing that you're able to see is a floor plan and some computer renderings, and the timelines are often vague and not set in stone, and so you take on some risk. Now you throw a pandemic into that, and you throw worldwide supply chain management issues. This is the result of it, and this has happened in every single industry, but in this particular case, it's a condo developer and real estate. So every single person who wants to get into pre-construction, wants to buy pre-construction, they are given a builder's contract, and there's what's called a 10-day cooling off period. So anybody who's familiar with this, they would go in, they would talk to the the builder or the sales rep for a pre-construction, and they would get a contract. They would then they would have 10 days to bring that contract to their lawyer, have their lawyer review it. Their lawyer would often point out certain clauses that would be, somewhat concerning, very concerning, or some, stuff to pay attention to in the contract moving forward. And then you can go back and forth with your lawyer, and they would advise you accordingly on those clauses. So in my opinion, this, it does highlight in the article that the builder is not doing anything fraudulent. They're not doing anything illegal. And they were allowed to do this. So without having the contract in front of me, if that's the case, obviously, they would have had a clause in there to be able to support them or be able to do what they're doing. And that's the situation. So, you can go back to the contract and say, hey, on clause X, Y, Z, it states this, and that's the reason for it. So it's a big gray area, but it's an unfortunate set of circumstances. But make sure you get your contract reviewed by a lawyer, and make sure you understand understand every single clause involved in that contract. And this pandemic and what has happened, there's been a lot of these cases that there has been new clauses and change clauses developed to be able to in the event that something like this happens again, to be able to support that, so we're not in this legal mess. There are a lot of builders out there who did not have certain types of clauses who ended up losing hundreds and thousands of dollars because they were building homes that they sold pre-construction, $300,000-$400,000 homes, and it was costing them the same, if not more, money to build. So there was definitely some people out there who lost, builders out there who had lost money because they did not protect themselves with these certain types of clauses.
Will a story like this scare people away from new builds in the future? When they see an escalation clause or whatever, if the price of materials go up, we know there was a lumber shortage at one point and prices skyrocketed. If they see these kind of escalation clauses? Will they take a step back and say, you know what, a new build might not be for me?
Yeah, for sure. I think it depends on how the clause is written in the contract, right? If there's an escalation clause, and it does give an example in the article and what an escalation clause would look like, it would state that, if the price of lumber goes up 30%, then the buyer would endure some type of cost up to $20,000. So the buyer would then have to ask themselves, okay, well, if this house, if I had to pay $20,000 for this house, would I be comfortable with that if the price of lumber went up? And they would say, if they're comfortable with that, then you continue to move forward. But that clause would also state that the buyer would have an opportunity to cancel the contract as well. So if the buyer wasn't comfortable with that, then they would be able to cancel the contract. So it would be a fair negotiation between the builder and the buyer in the event that something like this were to happen. But like, some people, there's a lot of buyers out there who would only prefer to buy new construction and who wouldn't want to live in a house with that somebody else has lived in, and wouldn't be interested in updating an older style home in any way at all. And like I always said, there is always risk associated with pre-construction. And some people are more comfortable with it than others, and it's just a situation of being comfortable with the contract laid out. But I would always go back to work with the builders that have a very good reputation and work with the builders who have been around forever. These people have, they have standards. They have, they're not going to lose their company, or they're not going to lose a customer over a couple of $100,000s, and they would, they can move on and move past these types of items. But it's a very difficult situation with what's going on in the pre-construction world for the last 2 years. These types of situations have been going on and on and on, and we've heard numbers, many different stories of different builders coming out and talking about what they've experienced and what they've endured through the pandemic. Whether it's finding trades or material or the lumber prices, it's been a complete mess, and unfortunately, the end user ultimately gets squeezed due to the way the contracts are structured.
Nice to hear, speaking of lumber prices, that they're finally back to at least what they were pre-pandemic, or at least close to that. And that is not only going to help developers build those new properties, but also those who are renovating their properties, because they won't have to fork over a ton of money that they were, even a few months ago. So it's nice to see that as well. Yeah,
it was insane what was going on. The lumber prices skyrocketed. To almost $1,600 per 1,000 board feet on a closing basis. It was just crazy, 6 times higher than the pandemic low in April 2020. So, it's good to see those numbers come down and people be able to people be able to build decks and fences and renovate their properties and not have to endure these astronomical lumber prices. It was unbelievable what was going on during the heat of the pandemic.
You're listening to the Golfi Real Estate Show Hamilton Edition on 900 CHML. You can listen to our show online through Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and many more. Just search for the Golfi Real Estate Show in your favorite podcast platform and hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. Let's switch gears and talk about Hamilton's urban boundary issue. So we know that there was a move to, or at least the provincial government, asking communities to look for areas where they can grow outwards, build new homes, tackle the housing supply issue, and with a bigger population expected in Hamilton and in Ontario in general, we need more homes. City Council has opted to go the opposite route in building new homes in areas like brownfield sites, empty spaces within the city. It's called infill development or intensification. Your thoughts on this burning issue? It's been a hot topic in town.
It's been a very hot topic with a lot of people involved, and it has captured the headlines across. It seems to be a story or a situation that everyone has been following. But it's been going on for years, and obviously when it comes to council and it gets a little heated, then it goes through these waves of situations where people get involved and it gets heated, and then it kind of disappears for a little bit, and then it comes back up and it gets more attention. So it's a very, very heated situation in terms of what's going on right now, and obviously, you can talk about the way the vote went.
Well, the vote was pretty overwhelming. It was 13-3 in terms of not expanding outward, although. And we had Hamilton Mayor Fred Eisenberger on Good Morning Hamilton on CHML a few days ago, who said, listen, the plan right now is to build within our city boundary and build up, but it's not a no vote. It's not a no growth option. A year, 2, 5, 10 years from now, that might change, and the city might agree to build a little outwards.
Yeah, and so in my opinion on this, and I would say a lot of people's opinions, give me one example of a situation where we have, put a frozen stop on growth in this city or this area. It's all been, not today, but maybe tomorrow. And with that being said, it's inevitable what's going to happen. Everybody knows that you can only do so much or try, do so many things to stop the growth. But in my opinion, I think it will happen. The amount of money that is at stake here and the amount of players that are involved here, I think they will. It's going to happen eventually. And when I say eventually, I don't mean in 6 to 8 months. I mean, whether it's 5 or 10 or 15 years, it will eventually happen. And that the reason is because we need the growth. We need more homes. We need more supply. And the population growth in comparison to what the new construction is, it's not sustainable. So eventually, in my opinion, I think it will happen. There will be more. There will be urban boundary expansion, especially in the areas that they have highlighted. They have the infrastructure to support it. And that's the right areas to grow in. So I think it will happen. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. And I think that as much as council wants to deny it right now, because it's a hard thought to overcome. But I think it's with the. These are massive companies and massive corporations who are investing millions and millions of dollars into these pieces of land. They have done their homework to be able to recognize what areas will be developed eventually. These people would not be investing this amount of money into this area unless they knew for sure if they had an opportunity to develop these lands. And these are, it talks about some of the big players who are the land developers. They have some of the best people working for them in this industry to be able to know and understand what pieces of land will be developed, and I think they've done their homework. So if we're going to follow what's been going on and what has gone on, I think it's inevitable that it will happen.
It's hard to believe, but investors now make up more than 25% of home buyers in this province. What is going on? Is this an explosion?
Yeah, it is an explosion. It's just there's so much attention right now on real estate investing. And the way the market has gone, it's a safe haven in terms of where to put your money and how to invest it properly to be very successful. And real estate has been one of those avenues that have been that for a lot of investors. It's been safe, it's been reliable, and it's appreciated at astronomical and rapid paces through the last, I would say, 10 years or so. So this has been an avenue that a lot of people are very well educated in, a lot of people are very comfortable in. And we've seen, a lot of investment companies developed, whether it's real estate holding companies or real estate investment trusts or things like that, and they've been buying real estate and have been very successful to do so. And there was an article that was just released and bring it back home to our area. But there's a lot of articles that were just, that are being released talking about how Hamilton's one of the best areas to buy real estate in Canada. And so what's happening is we see a lot of people coming down here and investing in real estate into our community. And it continues to have great returns, and people have been very successful with it. So it's a situation where people are extremely comfortable, and have been extremely successful. So we'll continue to see people doing it.
I think the biggest stumbling block for many who want to get into owning more than one property and have that second as just an investment property. And Rob and I have talked about it several times on the show. We always look at average home price 5-10 years ago, and we both have said, wow, we should have bought 10 homes at that time. The issue is, we don't have the cash on hand to make that transaction. Is that down payment? Is that willingness to stretch yourself maybe a little thinner than you'd like the biggest kind of stumbling block for Joe Schmo investor out there?
Yeah, but the situation is people are tapping into the equity that they have built up in the market. So it's very hard to go from 1 to 2. But once you get that equity built up in your first property, you're able to pull it out and reinvest it into a second property. There's a lot of financial tools out there. If you're working with the right mortgage broker or the right mortgage people, we have these home equity lines of credits. We have, purchase plus improvement programs, that where people are able to go from 1 to 2 to 3 properties very quickly. And then you can get into, creative financing, such as your B lenders or your private lenders, to be able to continue to invest in real estate. And we're seeing people not being afraid of taking on a lot of debt and reinvesting it back into properties. And that's what's making up the home buyers today. It's people reinvesting their old equity from previous properties. And I think this number is going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to grow, and it's going to continue to grow. And I've said this before on the show that it is so every single day, it gets more difficult for the first time home buyer to buy a house. And I always say the sooner that you can get into the market, the better, because you can start building equity right away, and you have that forced savings account, and you're able to reinvest into more real estate if that's the avenue that you want to go. But we've seen we continue to see people do refinance and then reinvest, and that's what's driving this real estate investment market.
All right, let's chat about some tips on picking the right home to flip. There are, as we heard in our previous segment, a lot of people wanting to jump into investment properties. Flipping is still very popular. What are some tips that you can provide to our listeners today?
Yeah, I mean, flipping is so popular, where people are constantly looking for the right home in the right neighborhood, and how they can make the most amount of money and doing the least amount of work. And we see it every single day. So first things first is research the market. Become educated on the local market, not just on the local property, right? So people will want to say, hey, what do you think I can get on this street, or what do you think I can get in this for this house? When you do it backwards and you research the market, then you'd be able to kind of pinpoint the specific houses that fit what you're looking for. So a lot of people like to work backwards and pick the house and then do the research the market first, and then pick the house. And I think it'll make you a better educated buyer when it comes to picking your next property. So know the market first. And when I say know the market for that specific neighborhood, not the overall real estate market. Not, Hamilton Central's up or whatever. Know what's going on in that specific neighborhood. And you'll have a better chance of making a better educated decision in researching the market first would be one of the biggest points.
And of course, when you're looking at potential homes to flip, you want to, pick homes that you can put some money in, maybe not a whole lot of money, but, they'll have some key renovation aspects to it in terms of, those return on investment items like kitchen, bathroom, and whatnot.
Yeah. So one thing that I always look at when it comes to flipping homes is The less structural stuff you have to do, check. That's one of the best things you can find is a house that does not need anything structural changed or moved, where all the walls can stay the same, everything can stay the same. The second nugget would be all the plumbing and wiring. You know, where are we at with the plumbing and where are we at with the wiring? Does it need to be changed or moved? If you can avoid those two big items, which in most cases it's very difficult to do. Oftentimes you're moving a sink or you're moving a toilet or you're putting in a bathroom. But if you can avoid those two items and you can just update the house with new floors, fresh paint, trim, doors, and pick and stick to the cosmetic items where you can make the house look really good, with updating it with just changing, flipping out in an item for item, then you can make some serious money and have a much more successful flip. So those would be two nuggets that I would focus on when it comes to in terms of the style of home, in terms of the condition of the home. If you can pay attention to those two items, I think you can be super successful in saving a lot of money when it comes to flipping the house.
We got to run here, but what is the one most common fatal mistake that flippers or investors make?
One fatal mistake that flippers and investors make is that's a tough one. I've seen a lot of mistakes, but I would say it's rushing. It's rushing. When you rush on a certain property, you don't make an educated decision, and often is a mistake, and we see that happening, especially in this market right now, where people aren't doing their research. They're jumping into a specific property, and then they're getting stuck with it and saying, you know what, if I knew this, I wouldn't have bought that property.
Research the home in the neighborhood to make sure your rental list is A-OK, and take your time. And great advice from Philip Golfi, sales representative with REMAX Escarpment Realty, the Golfi team, online at robgolfi.com. Call them today at 905-575-7700. Philip, great show. Thanks for listening to the Golfi Real Estate Show. We're back next Saturday at 9 on 900 CHML.